Hello gang, I'm filming a heated rivalry video. I'm slightly sick. I need to move this actually. I have cranberry juice and orange juice. I watched the show and I read the book. I did not read the second book, but I read the first book. And I think that and I have all my notes on here. I think heated rivalry will bring back woke. Make woke cool again. Heated rivalry is making thousands of people with all different genders and sexual orientations tune into a show that is at its core about gay people hooking up. But why? We're going to talk about fujoshis. If you're anything like me, you spent your formative years browsing Tumblr and reading fanfiction on AO3. Fun fact, I learned this while looking into this. Kevin Scott were actually based on Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes from Avengers. Heated Rivalry was written by a fujoshi, a sister if you will, and the majority of fujoshis turned out to either be fudanshis or lesbians. Fudanshi is the masculine version of fujoshi, who related to the elements of characters being closeted and feeling the need to hide who they really are. Trans guys and lesbians tend to enjoy a yaoi. I cannot speak for the lesbians, but yaoi is one of the only forms of media where being a short man can be seen as attractive rather than a flaw. Same with having a feminine face, etc. Straight women can find MLM ships and stories appealing because they're able to enjoy romance stories without reminders of how society treats women and how culture is built on sexism. Lots of straight couples in shows and books will have a woman, but she is only to help the male main character. These female characters can also be poorly written and full of stereotypes, or authors will turn to the not like other girls trope, which is also annoying. Also, there is something aesthetically pleasing about watching two beautiful men make out. I'm sorry. Some gay men are enjoying heated rivalry as well. I don't think I need to explain why. However, the show was getting backlash for not being real enough, and the actor who plays Scott Hunter came out and said that closeted hockey players in the early 2010s aren't going to have the same experiences as LA gays. Also, the majority of people working on the project are queer themselves. I've actually seen a lot of straight male hockey fans online enjoy the show. They tend to root for Shane, but they also like Ilya after he cooked for Shane. I want to talk about the plot. So both the book and the show follow roughly the same plot. Follow Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov. They're 17, 18, and they are being drafted into the NHL. From the beginning, these guys, Ilya is a number 1 pick, Shane is number 2 pick. But Shane wins Rookie of the Year while Ilya doesn't. So they're kind of constantly back and forth on the who is better. The show and book basically follow these two characters as they start hooking up, but then they kind of start becoming more, but they're not allowed to be because, one, the NHL is not cool with gay people, but also they're on 2 competing teams. So if they were to date, and I haven't read the second book, but I know a little bit about it, there could be allegations of one of them cheating. Basically, there's no good way for them to be together while both in the NHL. After roughly 8 years, I think 10 actually, after roughly 10 years of hooking up and not saying I love you, they finally start to acknowledge the fact that they have reciprocating feelings for each other. And originally they aren't going to do anything about it. They're just kind of let it go away. But Scott Hunter ends up coming out after winning the cup, and that kind of inspires them to also come out. So this book at its core is a cheesy hockey romance. This is probably one of the only times I've ever said that the screen adaptation of something is better than the book. Watching the show, I think I had seen three episodes before I started to read the book, and I was reading the book along with the show, so I was stopping where I knew that the episode was over. So I put a little book versus show bit. Dialogue in the show feels a lot more natural. I applaud the director of the show because some of the scenes in the book feel cringeworthy, but due to Connor Storrie, who plays Ilya Rozanov, and Hudson Williams, who plays Shane Hollander, these lines feel authentic. My cat is running around. They do change a couple of the names. They change the mascots of the two teams. Like in the book, they're the Boston Bears. Elia has a big ass bear tattoo on his chest, and I'm very, very, very thankful that they removed that. However, I would like to see a loon at some point on Elia. I would like them to keep that tattoo because that one's tasteful. The bear is not. I'm glad that the bear is gone. Both the book and the show have insane pacing. The show is a little bit easier to follow, in my opinion, with like the big text, if that makes any sense. The book opens with them being in like 2016, and then it bounces back to 2009, and then it follows them through, it goes. I liked the way that the show introduced them in 2009, didn't do the little prologue with them being in 2016. I liked the fact that it didn't do that. I liked the start of the show more than the start of the book. Yeah, so both the show and the book take place over 10 years, which it's like a 300-page book, and it's an 8-hour-long episode show. So you are going through 2 Obama terms during the show. So it does feel very fast-paced. In an ideal world, it would have been slowed down a little bit, but I understand the slow burn. Like, I understand why it's so... Like, they start immediately hooking up, but then you have to wait for them to, like... There's a lot of things that happen. Like, originally, Ilya is saying that he cannot go out with Shane because he won't be able to go back to Russia. But then Ilya's father dies. So he doesn't have that excuse anymore. But then he's like, we can't come out because the NHL. But then Scott Hunter comes out. So basically, over the course of the 10 years, they keep making excuses for why they can't get together, and finally, like, all of the excuses are gone. Like, there's nothing, so they do get together. Okay, one of the biggest critiques of this book, and also even more so the show, are Shane's ethnicity. They only bring up Shane being Asian, I think, twice in the book, and it's only mentioned that he's Japanese once. Hudson is Korean, that's the guy who plays Shane. So I'm admittedly confused why they didn't just make Shane Korean in the show, especially because it feels like it is only mentioned in the book for diversity points. Rachel never discusses the isolation he feels from being the only Japanese player on the team. Nothing of that ever, there's no rate, like, I don't think in the book it even, like, really discusses it. In the show it does a little bit, like when he gets drafted, the guy who runs the Montreal Metros is like, and don't be afraid that he's Asian. We've broken boundaries before. That's really it. Yuna, his mother, has a line about, like, how kids are gonna look up to him, implying that, like, Asian kids are gonna look up to him. Kids who don't see themselves out here a lot are gonna look up to you. But in the book, I don't think it's really ever mentioned that he is Asian. Yuna is the only one who brings it up to imply that Asian children will look up to him. Another issue is Yuna. She's played by Christina Chang, who is Taiwanese and Filipino. She's a great actress, but it did kind of feel a little bit like, she's Asian enough, let's just cast her. Because she's Taiwanese and Filipino, Hudson is Korean, and this is supposed to be a Japanese character. I don't understand why they didn't just make him Korean. There was nothing in the book that had to do with Shane being Japanese, like, at all. I'm going to talk about Ilya being from Russia. So I know nothing about Russia other than some of the political stuff. But I keep seeing posts online about how ignorant it is to have a love interest from Russia due to what they are currently doing to Ukraine. And I wanted to make it clear that at no point in the book is Russia portrayed in a good light. Ilya's father is portrayed as an abusive, homophobic man. So abusive that Ilya's mother kills herself. And his brother is portrayed as a greedy dirtbag. Ilya is actively trying to leave Russia. He does not want to be there. Rachel does this thing throughout the book where Ilya is kind of like the golden child, and, he has a million problems, and he can do no wrong. While Shane is just kind of portrayed as like this whiny little bitch because he was raised rich. Now, I think that the director cared for Shane. Like, Rachel has literally said that Elia is her favorite, and like, she's made these lists about like why Elia is a better character than Shane. I liked the fact that the director actually liked Shane as a character and wanted to kind of explore that more. I really enjoyed that because reading the book after watching the show is kind of like whiplash because you really realize how little Rachel Reed cared about Shane as a character and how much the director kind of wanted to develop him more than she did, which I think is interesting. We're going to talk about Shane's autism. I do not think that Shane was written on purpose to be autistic, but Rachel has leaned into this after autistic people connected with him. I enjoy him as a high-masking autistic character, especially his personality shift after he goes to the cottage with Elia. I personally found the show to be very endearing in that regard. I'm gonna pull my knees up. I felt like Shane's autism was very clear. Both Rachel Reed has discussed it, the director has discussed it, Hudson has discussed it, and how he pulled from, traits that his own dad has. I thought that it was very clear what they were doing with him. And I think it kind of reminds me of like Hannibal with Will Graham, how they create this character that's most likely autistic. And if you're only seeing the interactions he has with other people, he kind of looks like a douchebag. So in order to give the viewer more empathy and understanding towards Will, they show him in his house with his dogs. So they get to see another side of him that other people don't see. So they understand why the other agents think he's a jerk, but they also sympathize with him because they know that how he behaves when people aren't looking at him. I feel like they kind of did something similar with Shane, where when he's in public and he's interacting with people, he's very like uptight, which there's a scene where they're introducing him and they say that he's not very sociable, but he does have the highest hockey IQ, which I thought was very interesting because that is something that you would say about an autistic person. The only times that we really see Shane comfortable with another person are with Elia, and I think a lot of that stems from their relationship, obviously. But also, like, and I've heard online, I don't know if this is true, but in Russian culture, they tend to be a lot more blunt, which I think Shane probably appreciates because I guess he's Canadian. I don't go to Canada, but in America, at least, we beat around the bush. We are not blunt. And sometimes navigating situations like that can be kind of hard. So I would love if in the second season, if they would kind of go more in depth with that. I thought that was very interesting, the contrast between Shane interacting with other people versus interacting with Elia, where he like truly feels comfortable. Overall though, I did think that it was good. Not something I would typically read, but it was fun. And I did really like the show. Yeah, I'm really hoping that this show blowing up like how it did will lead to more stuff being made that is similar. I think that in like 2016, like before that, I feel like the amount of openly gay on-screen characters has rapidly declined. Like, I feel like all of the shows with gay male characters have since ended, and we weren't really making any new ones. So, I think it's really cool. And I'm glad that the show got made, and I'm glad that people like it.